Okay, we're going to continue with the videos for day 35, and I'm going to talk about example number 2. We're going to show you how to use the calculator to answer a question associated with these different rental prices. In this scenario, Rufus and Maria have moved to a new city. They've accepted jobs in a new city that they're not familiar with, and so a real estate broker has sent them a listing of apartments in their desired location, and this listing shows the square footage for each apartment, so the size of the apartment and also the amount that's being charged for monthly rent. And what we're trying to do here is decide whether there's a connection or a correlation between the size of the apartment and how much is being charged for rent. Hopefully you can recognize the benefit in running this analysis because of course, you know, a smaller apartment, something that's 600 square feet, is going to cost less per month than a larger apartment. But what you may not recognize is that, you know, in this example here, I've got 3 apartments of 3 different sizes, yet their prices are all the same. Or in this particular case, we've got an apartment that's smaller than a few others, and its rent is much higher. Now, seeing that on paper and after doing a true analysis of the data, it might be cause for concern because maybe the person that's renting this apartment just is paying too much for it, or maybe that apartment has something really, really nice. Either way, this analysis is going to give us some ideas or something to think about while looking for the perfect place to live. Additionally, the analysis might help the person who's renting this apartment get their rent down a little bit. Maybe the landlord's just charging too much for that property, and having some data in front of them, the tenant could actually talk down or negotiate down the price for rent per month in their next lease agreement. A lot of people don't recognize that rental cost or the lease amount per month is often negotiable. You can work out a deal with your landlord. So in order to do the calculation, do this regression analysis that we're talking about, we need to get this information from the worksheet into the calculator. So I'll be doing this on the TI Inspire, and I encourage you to do the same. Please make sure that you have a handheld from one of the chargers in the room, or if you want to open up this program on your computer, that would be fine too. Now, unlike most of the work we've done in this class for the semester, we can't use the scratch pad. We can't use the scratch pad to do this work. We actually need a new full document on this computer or on this calculator. So do make sure that you press the on key. You may have to hit it twice. We want to go to the home page here, and from the home page we're going to select to create a new document. Now, if your calculator hasn't been used recently, then when you press the new document, it'll bring you to this menu here. But if your computer has been used recently, then when you press the new document, you might get an error message. And we can tell the calculator that we can discard the current document and that you do want to start a brand new one. Once you agree to that and you get back to this menu, what we're going to do is add a list and spreadsheet page. You can select it by moving up and down with the mouse or the up and down arrows, or you can just as easily press the number 4 to open the list and spreadsheets page. Now, here's a good point to mention. While working through this video or while watching this video, it might be a good idea to pause the video so that you can keep up with the work on your calculator. It's not going to do you a whole lot of good just to watch me do this. Instead, I want you to practice this on your own. In fact, when we're done entering this data into the calculator, I'm going to have you complete some of the calculations on your own based on the process that we've done in the video. So again, please pause and replay parts of this video as necessary. The first thing that I like to do with this lists and spreadsheets page is label the column headings that we see from the table on our worksheet and put that into our calculator. Now, typing on these calculators can be a bit tricky, so I'm not going to write the whole title. In this first one, column A, I'm just going to write SF for square feet. And if I press the tab button, that brings me to the next column over, and here I can use just the letter R for rent if I'd like, but actually typing this one out isn't too bad, so I'll type out the whole word rent. Then from here I'm going to jump down to row number 1. Notice I'm skipping over this row that has an equal sign. We would only use that if we had a formula that we wanted to use to fill in an entire row at a time or an entire column at one time. We don't have that, so I'm again just going down to row number 1, and we're going to start entering some data. This is a bit tedious, and I hear a lot of students each year tell me that this is the tough and perhaps annoying part of the process. But at least once you get this data entered once, and once the calculator does its thing, it's going to make our work for future problems that much easier. So I'm going to pause the video here, and what I'm going to do is enter each number for each row and column into the calculator. So I'd like each of these sets of numbers entered into the calculator. So as an example, if I have the square footage is 664, I can press enter and move down to the next row, then enter 735, and so on. Then I can click up here and indicate my monthly rent was $9.95. Here we go, $9.95, press enter, then 1,045, and so on, until I get all of that data stored in here. So again, I'm going to pause the video, and I'll come back to you after I have my data plugged in. You should do the same on your calculator. Okay, so as you can see, I've got all of the data entered into the calculator. It took about 2 or 3 minutes to do that, but again, the work put in now is going to pay off shortly here in the future. Now this calculator can't do much with the numbers as they're stored in this spreadsheet, so what we have to do next is add another page for the data and statistics calculations. And the way we'll do that is we'll press the control button on our keypad and press the document page right here on the calculator. This will add a new page to our worksheet. So again, I pressed the control button, now I press document, and what I'd like to do is add a data and statistics page. So you can scroll down and select it, or you can press the number 5 on the keypad. Your data should look something like this, a jumbled mess at this point because we haven't organized this worksheet so far. What we'd like to do is adjust the variables on the horizontal and vertical axis. So if we move our mouse, and this time we do have to use our mouse on the keypad here, we do have to move our mouse down to the center of the screen and click on that by pressing the center of the keypad. What I'd like to do is place the square footage along the bottom of this graph, so that we can see what happens to the price of our rent as square footage increases. So we've aligned a horizontal axis at this point. We should also align to our vertical axis. Now the vertical axis is the rent associated with the square footage. So when I click rent here, we'll see something happen with our data. And I think it's pretty clear to see that there is some sort of relationship between these data points. For a little while there, the relationship is almost perfectly linear. Each of these data points are almost perfectly in a straight line. Then we get some unusual results here. For example, this apartment might be renting pretty low right now, so there's got to be a reason why it's so cheap compared to all of the others. And then this apartment, this is the one that might be renting a little bit higher than usual. It's above the average here. So again, by seeing the data on a graph like this, it might give you an opportunity to really consider what's going on in some of these locations. Just looking at the data isn't going to be good enough. We're going to actually create an equation that matches or that maps the best fit of this data. And that's what we'll do next. So to do that from this page, we're going to press the menu button on the calculator, choose to analyze this graph. So that was option number 4. We'll press option number 6 to determine what we call a regression. And since the data looks like it's falling in a straight line, we'll choose either option 1 or option 2 for the linear regression. I'm going to choose number 1 since it looks most like the equation that we're used to seeing in an algebra class. That's our slope-intercept equation. So here's that menu again. I accidentally bumped the screen. So again, choosing the linear equation, option number 1. Now, my calculator is set to display a whole lot of digits, and I don't think I need all of those. Yours may not be displaying this much either. I think what would be appropriate is to keep a calculation down to 2 decimal places. So to see how we can adjust that, follow along with me here. Again, I'll press the menu button. This time I'll adjust the settings. And rather than letting the display digits be set to auto, I think what I'll do is drag this slider down or use the down arrow and tell the calculator to fix the decimal places to 2 places. I don't want to let this thing float at all. We'll just set it out to fix, and I'll press the OK button. Now my equation went away, but it's still stored there. We just can't see it. So I have to move my mouse back to this equation here until the pointer finger shows up. And now when we click the equation, the data is on display. And we have this nice formula to work with. 0.91x plus 403.09. So I'm going to come back to the calculator and write this down. Y is equal to 0.91x plus 403.09. And you may recognize this, but our square feet is what was placed on our x-axis. Monthly rent was placed on y. So what we're saying is that the monthly rent for an apartment in this area y is equal to 0.91 times the square footage plus $403.09. Now again, this is a formula that's used to find the price for rent on average. So on average, we can find our rent payments. Rewrite that here. On average, rent payment based on size. So if I can find an article or a place for rent that seems to be lower than what's expected, then I think that would be a good candidate to go out and investigate. Maybe we can find ourselves a deal when it comes to renting an apartment. So what would be a good estimate for the amount of rent charged for an 880 square foot apartment? Maybe I found one online and it looked pretty good. So I'm going to calculate what the rental amount for this apartment ought to be. Well, that's y equals 0.91 times x. Now x in this case is 880 plus 403.9. Now, we could go to the calculator and open up a scratch pad and punch this into the calculator without much trouble. 0.91 times 880. I'm doing this without the parentheses, which is okay. Plus 403 this is 0.09. I think I wrote that wrong on the last page. I'll fix that. So based on the 880 square foot apartment, we might expect to pay around $1,203.89. So equals $1,203.89. Now again, it's unlikely that a landlord is asking for exactly $1,203.89. But at least we know that if the landlord's asking for $1,500 for this rent, we know that that's way too high. Or if the landlord is only asking $900 for this rent, that might be a good deal, or it might be something to be a bit concerned about why it's so cheap. If you'd like to see an even quicker way to complete these calculations, let me show you one other benefit to having this information typed into the calculator. So if I go back to the calculator, I'd like to close the scratch pad, and this time I'm going to add a new page again to this document. So I'll press Control and Dock key. This time I'm going to open up a calculator. So we have to open up a new page here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to recall the function that we've just calculated. So there's a lot of options here, and most of them are really not important for us, but this one right here, this stat.regression equation, this is the formula that was just created on the other page. We can only get to this menu since we've created this document in the TI Inspire. And you'll notice how this phrase is written in bold. That means there's a calculation going on behind the scenes that's about to be completed. And the really nice thing is that I can repeat this calculation for a series of values down the page. So watch this. I'm going to calculate 1,200 and 3,000 square foot apartment and see how much the cost for those are going to be. Watch how quickly we can do this. So I'm just going to type the number 1,200 into this screen. I would expect to pay around $1,490 for that apartment. You'll notice that I just pressed the up arrow and then the enter key to repeat the last calculation, and I can change that number now to 3,000, and I can see that my monthly rent should be around $3,121. And that was done again very quickly by calling the variable stat.regression equation. So here are the next two answers. As far as work that needs to be shown, I think if you write a phrase that reminded me that you're using the regression equation in the calculator, that'd be enough work for me if you were showing this on a test. If you weren't using the shortcut on the calculator, then the amount of work that you need to write out is this data here. So on this worksheet, there are at least 3 more examples that I'd like for you to compute. Please have that done so that we can, so that we can talk about them Monday in class. Now, of course, you could use the equation that we generated in this video, but again, I really hope that you're creating your own equation on your own calculator as well, so that you get the practice. Please let me know if you have any questions, and on Monday we can discuss.